My name is Clara, and I'm 34 years old. Thanksgiving has always been a complicated holiday for me. Growing up, it was loud, messy, filled with too much food, not enough space at the table, and a jumble of laughter and quiet resentments tucked into every corner. When I married James, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd finally get the picture-perfect Thanksgiving, warm, welcoming, with a family that loved and respected one another. But as I've learned, appearances can be deceiving. That morning, I woke before sunrise. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon, because I'd stayed up too late baking pies from scratch. My hands were still dusted with flour when I stood in the kitchen, staring at the turkey I'd brined for 2 days. Every detail of the meal mattered to me, not because I wanted praise, but because I believed in the power of traditions, the way food could bring people together, the way one meal could set the tone for the whole year. James wasn't in the kitchen. He rarely was. He'd been distant for months, always on his phone, texting with that same crooked smile he used to save for me. When I asked, he'd brush me off. Work, he'd say. Deals. And I wanted to believe him because the alternative, that his heart was somewhere else, was too heavy to carry before coffee. By 8, the house was buzzing. My in-laws arrived first. James's mother with her sharp perfume that filled the hallway before she even took off her coat, and his father, who barely looked up from his phone to mutter a hello. Then came his sister, Danielle, who hugged James like he was the only person in the room and gave me the kind of pat on the back you'd give a stranger you bumped into at the store. I plastered on a smile. That's what I was good at, smiling, making it seem like everything was fine. Because in my world, women like me weren't supposed to air their problems. We were supposed to host, serve, and make everyone comfortable, even when we were unraveling inside. As more family trickled in, the living room filled with chatter. The kids ran circles around the table, the football game droned in the background, and James sat at the center of it all, looking every bit the charming host. He had that charisma, that ease. People gravitated toward him. They always had. And I used to love it, until I realized he only ever shined when there was an audience. By noon, the turkey was roasting, the pies were cooling, and the table was set with the good china. I'd folded the napkins into little fans, something I saw on a YouTube video, because I thought maybe the small touches would make someone notice. But they didn't. No one noticed the napkins. No one asked how long I'd been up. No one thanked me for the effort. Instead, James's mother whispered to Danielle about how thin Lucy looked lately, and wasn't it amazing how she managed to juggle work and her new relationship. I froze at that name, Lucy. I'd heard it too many times lately, always from James's phone, always followed by his secretive grin. Lucy. The name clung to me like smoke, impossible to shake. We sat down to dinner, and the table was heavy with food and heavier with unspoken things. The mashed potatoes were passed around, the cranberry sauce too, and James cleared his throat like he was about to make a toast. Family, he said, raising his glass. I'm glad you're all here. There's something important I need to share. I looked at him, expecting the usual, some announcement about work, a new contract, maybe a brag about a bonus. But the way he looked at me before he spoke, the way his eyes skimmed right past mine, made my stomach twist. I've decided, James said, smiling too widely, to sell the house. The fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. A ripple of shock ran around the table, but no one more than me. Sell the house. The house I had poured myself into for years? The house I scrubbed and painted and filled with the warmth he never brought? For who? His father asked casually, like it was already a done deal. For Lucy's family, James said, and just like that, the name wasn't smoke anymore. It was fire. Lucy's family. There it was out loud in front of everyone. The affair I hadn't wanted to name. The betrayal I'd felt but couldn't prove. And now he was saying it like it was noble, like it was some grand act of generosity. The room went dead quiet. Forks hovered midair, mouths hung open, and for a long moment, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the turkey against the wall. I wanted to stand on that table and shout about the late nights, the missed calls, the way he made me feel invisible in my own home. But I didn't. I just sat there, calm on the outside, while inside everything was breaking. Because here's the thing James didn't know. He wasn't the only one with an announcement. And tucked safely in my bag right under the table was an envelope that would change everything.
If this story reached you, drop your country or city in the comments. I'd love to see how far it's traveled. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional, true-to-life stories just like this one.
The envelope sat there, plain as day, and yet it felt like a ticking bomb in the center of the Thanksgiving table. James laughed first, a sharp, dismissive sound. Really, Clara? This isn't the time for one of your dramatics. Dramatics. That was always his word for me when I tried to speak up. But I didn't flinch. I simply slid the envelope toward him, the corner scraping against the tablecloth, leaving the faintest crease in the linen.
Go on, I said.
Open it. His smirk faltered just a little, but pride wouldn't let him back down. He tore at the flap like it was nothing, like he was proving how little I could possibly surprise him. But the second he saw the first page, his hand froze. It was like watching a man choke on silence. What is this? His voice cracked just slightly. I leaned forward. That, I said softly, is proof that the house you just offered up doesn't belong to you anymore.
Gasps.
Audible, sharp, cutting through the room like shattered glass. His mother's hand flew to her pearls again. Danielle set down her glass too hard, wine sloshing onto the tablecloth. James blinked rapidly, as though his brain was refusing to process the words on the page. I had it transferred last month, I explained. Quietly. Legally. Every signature where it needed to be. You don't get to sell this house, James. You don't even own it. The silence after that was thick. Unbreathable. James's jaw tightened. You forged this. You. Don't. My voice sliced cleanly across his protest. Every page is notarized. Every move filed with the county. You can call our lawyer right now, but you'll only embarrass yourself further. His father leaned forward, squinting at the papers in disbelief. She's right. These are legitimate documents. Danielle turned her wide eyes on me. Clara, why would you do this? For the first time in years, I let myself laugh. A low, bitter laugh that made them all shift uncomfortably. Because I got tired of being treated like furniture in my own life. Because I watched you all nod and smile while my husband, announced that he was giving away my home for his mistress. And because I finally realized that the only way to be heard in this family was to take control. James shoved the papers back into the envelope, his face red with fury. You can't do this. You don't get to humiliate me like this in front of my family. Funny, I said, tilting my head. That's exactly what you just tried to do to me. The air crackled with a shift. For once, I wasn't the quiet one at the table. I wasn't the one swallowing down shame while they all whispered around me.
No.
This time, they were the ones speechless. James's mother stammered, But what does this mean? It means, I said evenly, that the house is safe. From him. From Lucy. From anyone who thinks they can bulldoze me without consequence. It's mine now. Mine alone. James slammed his fist on the table, rattling silverware. This isn't over. I met his eyes, calm as still water. Oh, James. For you? It already is. The room was buzzing now, questions, accusations, whispers. Danielle tried to change the subject, nervously laughing about the pie in the oven. James's father excused himself to the porch, muttering about needing air. The kids, wide-eyed, clung to their plates like shields.
But me?
I sat taller than I ever had. For the first time, I wasn't shrinking. I was towering. And the power in that moment, the power of finally standing up, of finally letting them see the truth, was worth more than every cruel word I'd ever endured. James pushed back his chair, the legs screeching against the hardwood. He didn't look at me as he stormed out of the room. Danielle ran after him, whispering frantic reassurances. His mother called after him helplessly. And when the door slammed shut, I reached for my fork and took another bite of turkey. Because the feast wasn't ruined. The feast was just beginning. The slam of the front door echoed long after James stormed out, like thunder rolling through the bones of the house. For years, that sound, the sound of him leaving, would have filled me with dread. Because he always came back angrier, louder, ready to remind me just how small I was supposed to be. But not this time. This time his leaving was a gift. A crack in the armor he wore so smugly, and for once, I wasn't the one running after him. I sat there at the head of the table, shoulders squared, fork balanced between my fingers like a queen with a scepter. Everyone else looked lost, like their script had been ripped out of their hands and tossed into the fire. Danielle finally crept back in, her heels clicking nervously. Her lipstick was smudged, and her forced smile did nothing to hide the panic in her eyes. "Well," she chirped, voice too high. "That was something. Maybe we should just move on? Eat dessert? Clara, you made pumpkin pie, didn't you?" I let her squirm in the silence for a few seconds before answering. "I did. But I think we all lost our appetite, don't you?" Her cheeks flushed. She looked down at her plate like a child caught lying. James's mother finally spoke. Her voice trembled, but there was steel underneath. "Clara, was this necessary? To embarrass him like this?" I turned my head slowly, meeting her gaze. Was it necessary for him to stand here, in front of all of you, and announce that he was throwing away our home for another woman? Tell me, where was your outrage then? Her mouth opened.
Closed.
Opened again. But no words came out. Exactly. Because in their eyes, humiliation was fine, as long as it was mine. But the moment I flipped the script, the room couldn't breathe. I set my fork down deliberately. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. Not to him. Not to you. Not to anyone at this table. The silence that followed was heavy. But this time, I wasn't crushed beneath it. I owned it. The night broke apart after that. Guests mumbled excuses, coats were pulled on hastily, and the once proud Thanksgiving gathering scattered like ashes on the wind. By the time I closed the door on the last relative, the house was quiet. The dishes were still on the table, the wine glasses half full. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon lingered in the air. It should have felt lonely, but instead it felt free. For the first time in years, this house wasn't a prison. It was mine. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the fire, the envelope still on the coffee table like a trophy. James didn't come home that night, or the next. By the third day, his absence became its own presence, calls ignored, his clothes untouched in the closet, his cologne fading from the air. But then, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find her. Lucy, the girlfriend. She was prettier than I expected. Younger, too. The kind of beauty that had no idea how fleeting it really was. She smiled like she owned the world already. "Clara?"
Hi.
"I think we need to talk." Every muscle in my body wanted to slam the door. But instead, I stepped aside. "Come in." She pranced into my living room like it was an open house. Her eyes skimmed the walls, the furniture, the photographs, as if she was already planning where her things would go. I stayed standing, arms folded. "What do you want?" She turned, flashing that polished grin. "James told me everything. About the house. About you trying to sabotage the sale. I just think maybe we should be adults about this, don't you?" I almost laughed. Adults. This child, this mistress, telling me to be an adult in my own home. "James didn't tell you the full story," I said. She tilted her head. "Then why don't you enlighten me?" I walked over to the coffee table, picked up the envelope, and handed it to her. Her smirk faltered as she flipped through the papers. The further she read, the deeper her frown grew. This can't be real," she whispered. "Oh, it's real," I said. "And it means you'll never live here. You'll never sell this place. You'll never get a single brick of it." Her face hardened. "You're pathetic, you know that? Clinging to walls and would like it'll make you happy. James doesn't love you. He hasn't loved you for years. You think this house will fix that?" I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a razor's edge.
No.
"But it will make sure that neither of you ever get to profit from the pieces of my life you tried to steal. You wanted to erase me, Lucy. Congratulations, you just got erased instead. Her jaw clenched, her eyes wet with fury. She shoved the envelope back into my chest. This isn't over, she spat, echoing James's words. I smiled. Oh, darling. It's over for you before it even began. She stormed out, the door slamming behind her. I sat back down by the fire, glass of wine in hand, and for the first time in months, I felt warmth that had nothing to do with the flames. Because I hadn't just saved my home. I had turned it into a fortress. And the people who thought they could strip it from me? They had no idea what was coming next. 3 days later, the first letter came. A crisp white envelope, tucked neatly between bills and junk mail. The return address read, Harrison and Brooks, attorneys at law. I already knew what it was before I even tore it open. James's first move. Inside was a demand, couched in legal jargon and pomp, that I vacate the property immediately to allow for sale proceedings. Vacate my own home. The sheer audacity made me laugh. A deep, bitter laugh that startled even me. I placed the letter on the table beside Lucy's still wrinkled envelope. One was written in legalese, the other in bold truths. Both told the same story. They thought I was weak. And they were wrong. I called my lawyer, a calm, sharp-eyed woman named Evelyn. I'd hired her months earlier when James first started talking about restructuring our assets. I knew then it wasn't about finances. It was about control. Evelyn listened quietly as I explained the letter. Then she chuckled softly. Let him try. Clara, you hold every card. The deed is in your name alone. He can send you 1,000 letters. It won't change a thing. Relief washed through me, but underneath it was something else. Something stronger.
Rage.
Because this wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about war. The calls started next. First from James. His number lit up my phone again and again, the buzzing relentless. I didn't answer. Then from mutual friends. Clara, maybe you should just be reasonable. Do you really want to drag this out? Think about how this looks for the family. Ah, family. The same family that sat in silence when he humiliated me. The same family that looked at me like I had ruined Thanksgiving by speaking the truth. Now, suddenly, they wanted to play peacekeepers. I ignored them all. Until the call came from someone I didn't expect. James's sister, Marlene. She'd never liked me much. Too loyal to her brother. Too comfortable with the narrative that I was the problem. But her voice on the line was different this time. Quiet. Careful. Clara, I need to tell you something. I sat up straighter. Go on. James, he's desperate. He's talking about draining your joint accounts. About moving assets before you can touch them. I don't know the details, but I thought you should know. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not because I was surprised. Oh no, I expected as much, but because hearing it out loud crystallized everything. This wasn't just betrayal anymore.
It was theft.
I thanked her, hung up, and immediately checked the accounts. Sure enough, withdrawals had begun. Small at first, just a few hundred here, a few thousand there. But the pattern was clear. He was trying to bleed me dry slowly, like a leech. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, I considered calling him, screaming down the phone, demanding he stop. But then I thought about Thanksgiving. I thought about Lucy's smirk. And I thought about the letter sitting on my table, daring me to fold. Instead of calling James, I called Evelyn. She didn't hesitate. Freeze everything.
Today.
I'll file the paperwork. By sundown, the accounts were locked tighter than Fort Knox. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. From James. What did you do? You think you can play games with me? Unfreeze the accounts or you'll regret it. Each message came faster, angrier, more frantic. I sipped my coffee and let them pile up like autumn leaves. Because here's the thing about men like James. They mistake silence for weakness. But silence is its own weapon. And I was just getting started. 2 days later, I ran into him in town. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Hair unkempt, eyes bloodshot, his once-tailored suit wrinkled and cheapened by desperation. He stormed up to me outside the cafe, voice loud enough to turn heads. You think you're clever, don't you? He spat. I tilted my head.
No, James.
I think I'm prepared. You can't win. I'll drag you through court for years if I have to. You'll come crawling back, begging for mercy. I smiled, slow, deliberate, razor sharp.
Funny.
That's exactly what Lucy said to me. And remind me, who's crawling now? His jaw tightened, his face a storm of rage and humiliation. You'll regret this, he hissed. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear.
No, James.
You will. Then I walked away, leaving him standing there, fists clenched, powerless in the middle of Main Street. For the first time in years, I was the one leaving him behind. And God, it felt good. But this war wasn't over. Because James wasn't just a man.
He was a wounded ego.
And a wounded ego is the most dangerous beast of all. As the weeks went on, his tactics grew dirtier. Anonymous letters in my mailbox. Strange cars parked outside my house at night. Rumors whispered in the community about how I was unstable, vindictive, cruel. It should have broken me. Instead, it hardened me. Every whisper only fueled my fire. Every petty attempt only proved how far he had fallen. And when Lucy tried one last desperate stunt, showing up again, this time with fake documents claiming James had rights to the house, I didn't even flinch. I simply handed them back with a smirk. Try harder next time. Because the truth was simple. They were playing checkers. I was playing chess. And the board was mine. The room was frozen. Forks half raised, wine glasses suspended midair, nobody breathing. James's words lingered in the air like poison. He was selling the house, our house, for his girlfriend's family. And in that silence, my body acted before my mind caught up. I pushed my chair back slowly, the scrape of the legs against the hardwood floor cutting through the tension. Every pair of eyes darted toward me. My heart was beating so loud I was sure the entire table could hear it. But my face,
Calm.
measured. The kind of calm that only comes when you've been preparing for this moment longer than anyone realizes. I reached into my bag, pulled out the thick envelope I had placed there that very morning, and set it down gently on the tablecloth. Actually, I said, my voice steady, though my hands tingled with adrenaline, I have an announcement too. The envelope sat between the turkey platter and the untouched cranberry sauce, looking absurdly ordinary for the storm it carried inside. James blinked, his smug expression flickering for the first time all evening. Clara, this isn't. No. I cut him off, locking my gaze with his. You've had your turn. Now it's mine. My mother-in-law's hand fluttered to her pearls. Lucy shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between me and James. The kids leaned forward, wide-eyed, sensing that something monumental was about to happen. I slid the envelope toward the center of the table. The sound of paper against linen was louder than thunder in that moment. Go ahead, I said. Open it. James hesitated. His bravado cracked just enough to show the boyish uncertainty underneath. Finally, he tore the seal and pulled out the documents. The color drained from his face. That, I said, savoring the silence, is proof that this house has been in my name for 3 years. Every mortgage payment?
Covered.
Every document signed?
By me.
You don't own this house, James. You never did. The table erupted. My father-in-law leaned forward, squinting at the papers. My sister-in-law gasped. The kids exchanged quick glances like they were watching the climax of a soap opera. James's hands trembled slightly as he flipped through page after page of notarized documents. His jaw clenched. This isn't possible, he muttered. Oh, it's very possible, I said softly, though every word was a blade. While you were busy playing the generous husband, I was quietly securing everything that mattered. You see, James, I knew long ago I couldn't trust you. So I planned accordingly. Lucy let out a nervous laugh, too high-pitched to sound natural. This is ridiculous. James, tell her. Shut up, Lucy, he snapped, his mask of charm cracking in front of his own parents. My breath caught, but I didn't flinch. His anger wasn't my burden anymore. I turned to his parents, my voice calmer now. You should know. James wasn't planning to sell this house for you, or for your family's benefit. He was planning to hand it over to Lucy's family. Behind all of our backs. Gasps all around the table. His mother's face twisted in shock, while his father's lips pressed into a thin line. The silence stretched long enough for me to feel my pulse slow, grounding me. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one cornered. James shoved the papers back into the envelope and slammed it onto the table. You think this makes you clever? You think this little stunt changes anything? Oh, it changes everything, I said, leaning forward. My eyes met his, and I didn't blink. You blindsided me, James. On Thanksgiving, no less. But here's the thing. While you were busy plotting, I was preparing. And now the only thing you've lost is the last shred of power you thought you had. The kid's eyes were wide as saucers. I caught my son's subtle smile from the corner of my eye. He understood. He saw me standing, finally, not as someone blindsided or betrayed, but as someone reclaiming everything. Lucy shifted in her chair, clearly wanting to vanish into the wallpaper. James's parents sat frozen, torn between disbelief and the dawning realization that their golden boy wasn't golden at all. And for once, I let the silence sit. I let them all stew in it. Because for the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't against me. It was mine. The quiet didn't last. Clara, this has to be a mistake, James's mother whispered, her trembling hand reaching for the envelope as though she could undo what she'd just seen. It's no mistake, I replied. My voice was steady, controlled. I made sure every document was signed, every stamp in place. This house belongs to me, and it has for years. Not James. Not Lucy. Me. James's father leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. But why, Clara? Why would you? Why? I interrupted, my voice sharp enough to make him stop. Because I had no choice. Because I saw the way James lived. The way he gambled with our security. The way he lied about money. I knew one day he'd pull something like this, and I refused to be left empty-handed when that day came. Lucy made a small choking sound, her perfectly painted lips parting as though she wanted to object but didn't dare. You're lying, James said suddenly, his voice louder, more desperate. He slammed his hand against the table, rattling the glasses. You forged this. You. Forged? I laughed bitterly. Go ahead, James. Call the bank.
Call the mortgage company.
Call the lawyer who signed those papers with me. Every single one of them will confirm the same thing. This house is mine. The room seemed to tilt. My heart pounded, but not with fear anymore. With power. James's face flushed red, beads of sweat forming at his temple. He looked around, waiting for anyone, to jump to his defense. But no one did. Not even Lucy. Especially not Lucy. You've embarrassed yourself, his father said finally, his voice low but cutting. In front of your wife. In front of your children. In front of us. James turned on him, his voice breaking. Dad. No, his father snapped, slamming his palm down so hard the silverware jumped. Enough. You've lied to this family for too long.
And now?
Now you've been caught. I swallowed hard. For years, I had waited for someone else to see him the way I did. And now, at the worst possible moment for him, they finally did. Lucy shifted in her seat, whispering, James, maybe we should just go. Oh, you're not going anywhere. I cut in. My eyes locked on hers. You came into my home on my holiday and sat at my table while James plotted to hand you everything I've worked for. You don't get to run from this. Her face went pale. She clutched her wine glass, but didn't drink. Her eyes darted to James, silently begging him to take control again. But he couldn't. Not this time. Mom. My daughter's small voice broke the tension. Is this why you've been working so late? I turned to her, my chest tightening. Her big, searching eyes made me ache. Yes, sweetheart, I said softly, my voice breaking just enough to remind them all that I was human. I've been working hard, making sure we had something safe. Something nobody could take from us. Her lip trembled, and then she gave me the smallest nod. My son reached for her hand under the table. That sight nearly broke me, but I held myself together.
For them.
James tried to recover, tried to regain his old arrogance. You think this makes you some kind of hero, Clara? All you've done is buy yourself a little time. Houses cost money. Mortgages, taxes, repairs. You can't do this without me. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his, and whispered so coldly the room itself seemed to drop in temperature. I've already done it without you. The words hung there like smoke. Lucy stood up abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. I didn't sign up for this circus, she spat. But her hands were shaking, and the way she avoided eye contact told me everything. She was realizing the safety net she thought she had wasn't real. Sit down, Lucy, I said firmly. She froze, then sank back down. Even she could feel it, the shift in power. My father-in-law cleared his throat. Clara, what happens now? I sat back in my chair, folding my hands in my lap, and for the first time all night, I smiled. What happens now, I said, my voice calm, resolute, is that this family learns the truth.
About James.
About his lies. About who has really been holding everything together. James's mother pressed her napkin to her lips. Tears shimmered in her eyes, not just of shame, but of realization. And James? He slumped back in his chair, the swagger drained from him, replaced by something raw, something desperate. Because for the first time in his life, James wasn't in control. I was. And I wasn't letting go. The silence stretched long enough that I could hear the clock ticking on the wall.
Tick, tick, tick.
James broke it first. You think this little stun is going to save you? His voice cracked halfway through, his false confidence bleeding out like air from a punctured tire. This house doesn't fix everything. You're still nothing without me. I leaned back slowly, almost leisurely, as if I had all the time in the world. You've been saying that for years, James. But tell me, who's really the nothing now? The man who sold his family out at Thanksgiving? The man whose parents can't even look at him? Or the woman who had the foresight to protect her children? Lucy shifted uncomfortably beside him. Her nails tapped against the wine glass, the only sound in the room. Finally, she snapped, James, you didn't tell me she owned the house. He turned on her instantly. Lucy, shut up. No, she shouted, surprising even herself. Her voice trembled with anger and panic. You promised me stability. You told me this house was as good as ours. You told me Clara was done. And now you've dragged me into this humiliation. James clenched his fists. His jaw tightened. You knew what this was, Lucy. I thought I did, she whispered, suddenly small, her face pale under the chandelier light. But clearly I didn't. The irony nearly made me laugh. Lucy, who'd strutted into my life like she was walking a runway, suddenly shrinking into herself when the truth burned through her illusions. My daughter spoke again, her voice steadier this time. Dad, how could you? That cracked him. He flinched like the words themselves were physical blows. Sweetheart, you don't understand. No, she cut in sharply, her young voice trembling with strength. I do understand. You were going to throw us out. For her. She jerked her chin toward Lucy. For someone who doesn't even care about us. Lucy's face flushed. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but no words came. James reached toward his daughter, but she pulled back. My son slid his arm around her shoulders protectively, glaring at his father. Something broke in James then. His hand fell uselessly back to the table. For years, he'd relied on fear, manipulation, and charm.
But now?
None of it worked.
Not on his parents.
Not on Lucy.
Not on me.
And not on his children. His father cleared his throat. James, he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. You've made your choices. And now you live with them. Dad, you can't. I can, the older man snapped. His eyes, usually warm, were cold steel now. You've disgraced this family. And you've done it in front of your wife and children. Don't you dare ask me to excuse this. James's mother finally spoke. Her voice cracked under the weight of her tears. Clara, I'm so sorry. We should have seen. We should have helped you. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. It's not your fault, I said softly. He hid it well.
But you see it now.
And that's enough. James slammed his fist against the table again. You all think you're against me now, but I'm still the man of this house. I rose to my feet slowly. My chair scraped back across the hardwood, loud and deliberate.
No, James.
You're a guest, and one who's overstayed his welcome. The air left the room in a single collective gasp. Lucy's eyes darted between us. You're kicking him out? I'm giving him exactly what he wanted to give us, I said, my voice steady, unshakable. A cold seat at someone else's table. Except in this case, he'll be the one finding a place to sleep tonight. Not me. Not our children. James's mouth fell open, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. You can't do this. I already have, I said simply. I protected this home from you years ago. You gambled your family away for fantasy. Now live with the consequences. Lucy pushed her chair back suddenly, her heels clacking against the floor as she stood. You know what, James?
She's right.
I'm not going down with you. She grabbed her purse, tossed her napkin onto her half-eaten plate, and muttered, I didn't sign up for this mess. He spun toward her, desperate. Lucy, wait. But she didn't. The front door slammed a moment later, leaving only silence in her wake. James sank back into his chair like a deflated balloon. His eyes darted wildly, searching for an ally. But there were none left. Finally, he looked at me. Clara, please. Don't do this. Don't take the kids away from me. Don't. I held up a hand. Stop. My voice cut through his pleas like a knife. For years, I begged you to change. For years, I gave you chance after chance. But tonight? Tonight you showed your true self to everyone. You made your announcement. Now you live with mine. His lips trembled, but no words came. I turned to my children, softening. Sweethearts, go upstairs. I'll be up in a bit. They obeyed instantly, their small footsteps thudding against the staircase. My son turned back once, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in him before, pride. When they were gone, I faced James one last time. Pack your things. You're leaving tonight. His father nodded in solemn agreement. Well, he'll make sure he goes, Clara. You won't be alone. And for the first time in years, I believed it. Because I wasn't alone anymore. The room, once heavy with dread, now felt lighter. The power that James had wielded for so long was gone, replaced by something stronger, something steadier.
Me.
And as I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of his lies, I realized something else. Thanksgiving wasn't ruined. It was reborn. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving James. I was free of him. And that, I thought with a steady smile, was something to truly be thankful for.